These aircraft, serving with the Air National Guard in April 1971, were among the last ones of their kind in U.S. service.
8 months later, the final F-84s were retired and sent to the scrapyard. By then, most Thunderjets were long gone. Only this version, the RF-84 Thunderflash reconnaissance plane, remained in significant numbers due to its specialized operational value. By 1971, the fleet was clearly aging. Many were grounded from structural fatigue, while those still flying required constant inspections and intensive maintenance. The last RF variant had been produced in 1957 and had endured a busy operational life. The Thunderflash photographic aircraft represented the most advanced evolution of the F-84 family, embodying all the design improvements made since the project began in October 1944. At that point, Republic's design team had moved away from adapting a jet engine to the rugged P-47 Thunderbolt and started fresh to create an entirely new aircraft. The United States faced the emergence of advanced German and British jet aircraft. Over the following years, the U.S. Army launched an urgent effort to close the gap. Bell and Lockheed developed the first American jet aircraft, with the Lockheed P-80 entering production. Meanwhile, Republic devised a sleek, streamlined design centered around General Electric's new axial flow engine. The result was remarkable, prompting the Army to authorize construction of 3 prototype planes designated the XP-84. The first prototype was finished in December 1945 and transported to the Muroc Testing Center for evaluation. On February 28, 1946, the aircraft made its first flight, becoming America's first post-war fighter. Its design was relatively conventional, featuring straight wings with a laminar flow profile. The aircraft featured an all-metal construction with low-mounted wings on the fuselage. Beneath the teardrop canopy, the cockpit was pressurized and equipped with an ejector seat. Although not groundbreaking technologically, it had classic lines and incorporated many proven concepts of its time. Production progressed quickly in relatively small batches until the E model was introduced in 1949. With over 840 units built, ongoing design refinements led to many improvements being retrofitted to earlier versions. For instance, this E model has been updated with several advancements developed for later variants. From the outset, the plane faced challenges, largely the same issues common to other early jet aircraft. The issues reflected a lack of understanding about the requirements and potential of the new jet power plants. Over time, the aircraft evolved significantly, eventually bearing little resemblance to the sleek 1946 prototype. The most glaring design flaw was its straight wing, prompting approval to develop a swept-wing version. Another major issue was beyond the designer's control. The Thunderjet was severely underpowered. Like all early jets, it suffered from low thrust and required long runways for takeoff. When fully loaded, rocket-assisted takeoff was often safer than risking the plane running out of runway. Unfortunately, many planes failed to lift off in time, and hundreds of Thunderjets were lost in such accidents worldwide. Even the later swept-wing models needed assisted takeoff gear, as their more powerful engines were offset by their increased weight. development proceeded slowly, so an improved straight-wing version was produced as a stopgap measure. The G model was produced in greater numbers than any other version, with 3,025 units built. Originally designed as an interceptor, the aircraft was armed with 6 machine guns, 4 in the nose and 2 in the wings. The Thunderjet had replaced the Lockheed P-80, which was developed 2 years earlier. However, due to the speed limitations of its straight wing and underpowered engine, the F-84 was soon replaced as an interceptor by the North American F-86 Sabre. The rapid progression of models left the Army with various aircraft suited to different roles. In this division of tasks, the Thunderjet evolved into a fighter-bomber, and by the G model, it had gained the capability to deliver nuclear strikes. The Thunderjet earned its strong combat reputation in tactical support and air-to-ground strike missions. Its low-mounted wing facilitated this role by allowing easy loading of weapons with minimal equipment. Capable of carrying up to 4,000 pounds of bombs, the Thunderjet delivered powerful attacks. With rocket-assisted takeoff, it could operate from short, rugged front-line airstrips, while its sturdy construction allowed it to withstand small arms fire and remain airborne. Adding to its ground attack effectiveness were its 6 machine guns, each with a capacity of 300 rounds. The aircraft could carry up to 32 5-inch rockets under its wings and fuselage, a capability inspired by World War II tank-busting missions. Additionally, it could deliver a lethal payload of napalm, offering further versatility in strike missions. The straight-wing design limited the plane's top speed to Mach 0.82, effectively disqualifying it from air-to-air combat. At higher speeds, the aircraft became dangerously unstable, risking structural failure. Another drawback as a fighter was its limited maneuverability. However, this lack of agility proved advantageous in ground attack roles, as the plane flew with exceptional stability, serving as a reliable platform for strikes. The speed limitation was also irrelevant for ground operations, where precision and endurance mattered more than velocity. Despite its notoriously difficult takeoff characteristics, the Thunderjet excelled in tactical missions. The initial production version, the B model, was a rudimentary aircraft offering little advancement over 1945 piston engine fighters. However, as successful models and subvariants were developed, the aircraft's sophistication increased significantly. By the G model, it featured radar-assisted sighting, an autopilot, and updated electrical, fuel, and hydraulic systems, along with numerous other enhancements. Early jet engines were highly fuel inefficient, and the Thunderjet had limited internal fuel capacity. While wingtip tanks increased its range, the early models were still limited to about 1,200 miles. By the time the G model was introduced, its range had been extended to 2,000 miles, but a crucial modification was added. As it was used by the Strategic Air Command as an escort fighter, in-flight refueling capability was incorporated. Interestingly, the refueling receiver was placed in the left wing, which disrupted airflow across a significant portion of the wing surface. The G model had only been developed due to delays in the development of the swept-wing version. However, by 1952, the new model was ready for its first flight. Initially designated the F-96, the aircraft's designation was later reverted to the F-84F, and it was named the Thunderstreak. Once again, the aircraft's performance in its intended fighter role proved disappointing. The increased engine power and the improved aerodynamics were negated by the added weight of the plane, causing it to retain the sluggishness of earlier models, particularly in its reluctant takeoff performance. In terms of speed, the F model could reach 695 miles per hour, compared to the G model's 622. However, in terms of climb rate and ceiling, the new model was outperformed by the straight-wing versions. The F model followed its predecessors in being used as a tactical fighter bomber. Development of the swept-wing version was repeatedly delayed, primarily due to budgetary constraints. Congress kept tight control over funding, and the Air Force lacked the resources to push the project forward. The prototype of the swept-wing model first flew on June 3, 1950. It quickly became clear that a more powerful engine was required, but development stalled at that point. The project only regained momentum after a significant event provided the necessary push. Just 22 days after the first flight of the swept-wing model, news of a communist invasion of South Korea reached the United States. This event triggered a surge in defense spending that has continued with little interruption ever since.
Although many countries promptly disbanded their wartime armies, other countries continued to maintain forces so large that they posed a constant threat of aggression. And this year, the invasion of Korea has shown that there are some who will resort to outright war, contrary to the principles of the Charter, if it suits their end.
When the Korean War broke out, the United States Air Force was a mere shadow of the powerful force it had been just 5 years earlier. The South Korean Air Force was virtually non-existent, consisting of just 16 aircraft, all trainers or liaison planes, with a single gun or bomb rack among them. Airfields were few and basic, further limiting the South's capability. As a result, the initial burden fell on piston-engine aircraft to operate from Korea. American jets, based in Japan, were forced to travel to the battlefront with limited loitering time available. The air force the U.S. could deploy was barely sufficient for the task, and if the North Koreans had possessed a capable air force, the entire peninsula could have been swiftly overrun. In reality, the North had 62 light attack planes and 70 outdated fighters, which were quickly destroyed by the Americans. This allowed U.S. forces to slow and eventually halt the northern advance. Heavy bombers were used for a combination of interdiction and strategic raids, which significantly hindered the northern efforts. In conjunction with Navy aircraft and the few types the Air Force could effectively deploy from the limited airstrips in Korea, the United States achieved air supremacy and maintained it for much of the conflict. Given the initial weakness of the ground forces, it is clear that the victories in Korea in late 1950 were largely due to the American aircraft. The F-84s were not initially sent to Korea. P-51 Mustangs and P-80s were more than capable of handling the task. However, on November 9, 1950, the situation changed dramatically. The North Koreans began deploying jets. Within days, the United States was compelled to send more modern aircraft to the front. The Thunderjets available were the straight-wing D and E models, which were never a match for the MiGs. Still, the F-84s, though not fast enough to down the Russian jets, were agile enough to typically avoid direct confrontation. Less than a month after the MiG-15s appeared on December 6th, the first F-84 combat missions were launched. The aircraft were shipped to Japan, where salt corrosion damage was repaired, and along with the F-86 Sabres, were sent into battle. Outclassed as fighters by the two swept-wing jets, the F-84s found their niche in tactical air-to-ground operations. Most of the time, the F-84s needed Sabres as escorts, especially if there was a chance of encountering MiGs. The Russian jets were simply too fast for the Thunderjets to engage effectively. However, in their tactical role, the F-84s proved invaluable. By the end of the war, they had flown 86,408 sorties. During this period, they dropped 5,560 tons of napalm and 50,427 tons of bombs. They fired 22,154 rockets and an immense number of machine gun rounds. The infantry, a mix of admiration and gratitude, came to dub them the champ of the fighter bombers. Nine MiGs were officially credited as shot down by Thunderjets, and another 96 were either likely destroyed or certainly damaged. In comparison, the MiGs shot down 18 Thunderjets and damaged many more. However, it was anti-aircraft fire that took the greatest toll on the F-84s. A total of 135 Thunderjets were shot down by ground forces. Though some missions were flown from Japan, relying on in-flight refueling, the Thunderjets were tough enough and had enough ground clearance to operate from Korea's rugged airstrips. This often involved using assisted takeoffs with rocket packs jettisoned for later retrieval and reuse. The situation was far from ideal, as the rocket smoke was so thick in squadron formation that only the lead aircraft could see clearly, while the following planes had to rely on instruments to take off. The routines of briefing, preparation, takeoff, and attack became second nature. The F-84s shouldered a heavy burden, not only providing ground support at the front lines, but also interdicting supplies, attacking reinforcements, and destroying bridges, railways, and power stations. In the latter task, they even operated as a strategic force, reflecting how they had earned a reputation for being reliable, rugged, and deadly. They had proven themselves as a primary weapon in the Air Force's arsenal. The Thunderjets' greatest strengths were emphasized in Korea. They were, especially in comparison to other early jets, easy to maintain. They were also stable and effective platforms for attack, capable of withstanding significant damage. Their performance, though unremarkable, when compared to newer designs, was solid, especially when considered alongside their Republic relatives, such as the P-47 from World War II and the influential F-105s of the Vietnam War. Despite their shortcomings, the Thunderjet emerged as the most effective jet attack plane in the Air Force during the Korean conflict. It began to step out from the shadow of its flaws, revealing itself as an important and successful aircraft. Its significance should be understood within the context of its time. Many early jets were far less capable and successful than the F-84. Their contribution to the Korean War could be described as admirable. But the reason the Thunderjets were entrusted with the grueling, repetitive, and perilous tasks of the conflict is simple. They were reliable when other aircraft types failed in combat. While the Thunderjets had their drawbacks and limitations, they also earned some of the most unflattering nicknames ever given to U.S. aircraft, such as Groundhog, a reference to their sluggish takeoff. As time went on, however, crews grew to appreciate the plane's strengths, and the nickname was shortened to Hog, which, though still not entirely flattering, became more affectionate. Many of the lessons learned during the Second World War were considered outdated after the advent of the atomic bomb. The Thunderjet's role in the Korean War coincided with a shifting global political landscape, where the concept of limited war began to take shape in response to the advent of nuclear weapons and the ensuing threat of mutually assured destruction. The Thunderjets, though initially seen as outdated, proved themselves to be highly effective in this new form of warfare, particularly in tactical air support and ground attack missions. By the end of the Korean War, the world had been irrevocably altered. The cessation of the occupation of West Germany in 1954 marked a new chapter in international relations, with former adversaries, like the Germans, being reintegrated into the global community. The handover of the F-84F Thunderstreaks to the German Luftwaffe in 1956 symbolized a broader shift, where the Thunderjets, now in their updated form, played a role not only in the legacy of the United States, but also in the rebuilding and rearming of nations once at odds. This marked the beginning of a new era, where former enemies collaborated for mutual defense, and the Thunderjets, now part of a larger European defense framework, continue to serve the reshaped post-war world order. The Thunderstreak's widespread deployment by NATO countries underscored the enduring value of the F-84 design, even as newer, more advanced aircraft began to enter service. The Germans, in particular, became the largest foreign user of the Thunderstreak, operating 5 full wings, while other NATO allies like France, Belgium, Portugal, Turkey, and Italy also utilized the F-84 for their defense. These aircraft served as the frontline defense in Europe during a time when tensions between East and West were at their peak, making their contribution to regional security immeasurable. The Turkish Air Force, for example, operated Thunderstreaks until 1982, a testament to the longevity of the platform. Despite their limitations, particularly in speed and maneuverability, the F-84s were seen as reliable workhorses in tactical and ground support roles. Their phased-out replacement came as newer aircraft with enhanced capabilities were developed, but for decades, the F-84 was one of the best available options for NATO forces. Another notable variant of the F-84 was the RF-84F, known as the Thunderflash. The need for a high-speed reconnaissance aircraft was highlighted by the Korean War, where speed and the ability to avoid interception by MiGs were crucial. Designed to meet the need for higher speed and greater range than the planes previously used for the role. Based on the second swept-wing prototype of the F-84, which featured a closed pointed nose and wing intakes, designs not incorporated into the fighter version, the Thunderflash underwent significant changes for its intended mission. The blunter nose design allowed for the accommodation of 6 cameras, an essential feature for aerial reconnaissance. The RF-84F prototype first flew in February of 1952, and after successful testing, it went into production, with 718 units constructed. Production was delayed due to engine difficulties, but eventually ramped up, and the aircraft entered operational service. The U.S. Air Force deployed 11 squadrons of Thunderflashes, and they served for 17 years, providing essential photographic reconnaissance during that time. Additionally, 327 units were supplied to allied nations through U.S. military assistance programs. Though the RF-84F was originally intended as a stopgap measure, it served its purpose effectively. However, after just 3 years of frontline service with the U.S. Air Force, it was replaced by the McDonnell RF-101 Voodoo, which offered greater performance for the reconnaissance mission. Despite this relatively short period in active service, the Thunderflash played a crucial role in the evolution of high-speed reconnaissance aircraft during the Cold War. The long service life of the RF-84F Thunderflash with the National Guard is a testament to how well the Republic team had designed it for the photo reconnaissance task. The aircraft's ease of maintenance and ground operation access were vital to its sustained effectiveness, and these features had a lasting impact on future aircraft designs. The F-84 family, including the Thunderflash, was known for its simplified servicing requirements, a result of meticulous design work. This included features such as over 180 access panels and the ability to remove the entire tail section to simplify engine maintenance, all contributing to the aircraft's operational viability. The Thunderjets also marked a significant milestone in the history of the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds, the Air Force's elite aerial demonstration team. While it's unclear whether the team's name was directly inspired by the aircraft, it is known that the F-84 was the first plane used by the Thunderbirds when the team was formed in 1953. This further cemented the Thunderjet's place in aviation history, not just as a combat aircraft, but also as a symbol of American air superiority during the early Cold War years. The F-84G Thunderjets were indeed a significant part of the Thunderbird's early years, with the team flying them for 2 years before transitioning to the swept-wing F-84F for the 1955 season. The tight formation flying required with these aircraft, which had a wingspan of only 5 feet apart, was highly risky, especially given the early jet's limited maneuverability. Despite the dangers, the Thunderbirds successfully performed 91 shows with the F-84F, ending with the Armed Forces Day show in 1956, before upgrading to the supersonic F-100 Super Sabre. The FICON, or Fighter Conveyor project, was one such notable initiative. The FICON program sought to address the need for aerial surveillance during the Cold War by using the F-84 as a fighter conveyor. The idea was to modify the F-84 to carry a small reconnaissance drone or other payloads beneath its fuselage, effectively transforming it into a dual-role platform. This project highlighted the versatility of the F-84 series and its ability to adapt to evolving military needs during the early years of the Cold War. These innovations not only contributed to the F-84's success in service, but also provided valuable lessons in the development of future aircraft designs. The FICON Fighter Conveyor program was an innovative solution to the problem of performing reconnaissance missions over hostile territory with a fighter aircraft that had limited range and endurance. The concept was to use a large bomber, like the B-36, as a mothership to carry the reconnaissance fighter close to the target area. The fighter would be launched mid-flight, conduct the reconnaissance mission, and then be retrieved back by the bomber. This concept was simple in theory but required significant engineering and operational challenges to implement. The first tests with the modified F-84E in 1952 revealed a range of problems, including instability in the cradle used to hold the fighter on the bomber and issues with the fighter's hydraulic grapple system that was meant to secure it for retrieval. The stability of the fighter when attached to the bomber was especially challenging, as the fighter would often struggle with aerodynamic turbulence, especially in low-speed ranges when the aircraft was buffeted by the B-36 slipstream. Despite these difficulties, continuous refinements to the systems improved the reliability of the operation. Eventually, the FICON system demonstrated that it was possible for a fighter to be deployed from and recovered by a large bomber in flight. However, it remained a highly dangerous and complex operation that was never widely used in combat. The RF-84F was modified and redesignated as the RF-84K for operational deployment. Testing began in 1953, and by March 30th, the prototype successfully docked for the first time, resolving initial issues with the docking mechanisms. Modifications included a redesign of the horizontal tail and the addition of hydraulic latches to allow the plane to be stored in the B-36's bomb bay. After testing, the 91st Strategic Reconnaissance Squadron received 25 RF-84Ks, working alongside modified B-36s. The program ended in 1956, coinciding with the introduction of the U-2 reconnaissance aircraft. After the Soviets developed atomic weapons and delivery systems, one of the planners' main concerns was that airfields could be completely destroyed along with all their aircraft in a single strike. This and other factors, such as jets' need for long straight concrete runways, led to the creation of the Zero-Length Launch, or ZEL system. The idea was to launch manned, nuclear-armed aircraft from trucks or concrete bunkers, with hundreds of aircraft hidden in forests and other locations around the Soviet bloc's borders. These planes could be ready to respond immediately to a Soviet attack. Another version aimed to launch interceptors from similar setups to counter Soviet bombers. Martin Company tested the system using unmanned F-84G aircraft, which showed promising results. The first launch took place on December 15, 1953, and involved rapidly accelerating the F-84 from the truck before allowing it to land back on Earth. More tests followed. The Zero-Length Launch System used powerful solid fuel rocket boosters attached directly to the aircraft. Once the rocket fuel was depleted, the booster had to be discarded quickly as it became a drag on the aircraft. Tests show that by the time the rocket burned out, the aircraft reached 175 miles per hour, above stall speed, allowing the jet engine to take over. The first two unmanned trials showed results so close to expectations that the project moved forward to the third trial with a piloted plane on January 5, 1954. The recorded acceleration was 3.5 Gs, slightly higher than a Navy catapult launch. The pilot easily took control, and the test was deemed successful. The project continued until 1959, with tests using modified F-100 Super Sabres, and 148 orders were placed. Interestingly, the Soviets conducted similar experiments with MiG-19s. The project was eventually abandoned due to the development of more reliable missile systems. The F-84 continued to inspire a wide range of experimental variants, including the unusual F-84H model, designed as a supersonic propeller-driven aircraft. Initially designated as the F-106, this model had little in common with other F-84s and was later redesignated the F-84H. Two prototypes were ordered for potential Navy carrier use. The aircraft featured a turboprop, and various propellers were studied during development. Its first flight took place on July 22, 1955, and went smoothly. However, the aircraft failed to meet expectations and didn't exceed Mach 1, reaching only 670 miles per hour. While it became the world's fastest propeller-driven aircraft, it was ultimately unsuitable for the Navy's needs. A key limitation of propeller-driven aircraft had already been recognized. At speeds nearing Mach 1, and especially when passing through it, parts of the propeller would simultaneously move at speeds both above and below the speed of sound. This created immense stresses on the propeller, requiring revolutionary advancements in design and construction to withstand the varying loads. As a test platform for this technology, the F-84H proved invaluable. Experiments demonstrated the durability of the three-bladed propeller and the reliability of the power plant and airframe. However, with the advent of steam catapults, angled decks, and aerial refueling, the Navy abandoned the project in favor of true jet aircraft. The U.S. Air Force continued the F-84H project as basic research for future development. In addition to being the world's fastest propeller-driven aircraft, the F-84H is also widely regarded as the noisiest aircraft ever built. The engine, a large Allison unit producing nearly 6,000 horsepower, was a minor contributor to the aircraft's noise. The true source of the deafening racket was the propeller. At high speeds, even during ground maneuvers, the propeller tips reached supersonic speeds, creating about 900 sonic booms per minute, which combined into a thunderous sound. The noise was so intense that ground crew involved in the testing experienced symptoms like malaise and nausea, even while wearing earplugs during taxiing runs and takeoffs. A squadron of these aircraft on a carrier deck preparing for takeoff would have severely impacted operational efficiency, leading to the sensible abandonment of the aircraft and its supersonic propellers. Perhaps the most remarkable derivative of the F-84 was the XF-91 Thunderceptor, a 1946 design that remains one of the most extraordinary experimental aircraft of its time. Equipped with 4 rocket chambers and a powerful jet engine, it became the first U.S. combat plane to break the speed of sound in level flight. The wings of the Thunderceptor were also capable of pivoting. The XF-91 Thunderceptor's innovative wing design, combined with full-strength slats, resulted in an unusually low stall speed, enabling in-flight maneuvers that were unique for its time. The wings tapered from the tip toward the fuselage, reversing the typical wingtip stall effect by turning dangerous pitch up into easily manageable pitch down. With its intended power plants, the aircraft was expected to reach Mach 2, but even with the available engines, it could achieve Mach 1.2. Despite being the most advanced design of its era, the project was not pursued due to cost. Republic's ambition extended to the Mach 3 XF-103, a delta-winged design using both turbojets and ramjets, and featuring an enclosed pilot's compartment with no canopy. An F-84 was used to test periscope systems for the XF-103 pilot, proving the system's viability. In the Air National Guard, the F-84 enjoyed a long, uneventful career, often overshadowed by its slow takeoff, but respected by its pilots. While it was relegated to second-line status with the U.S. Air Force, many other nations kept it as a frontline aircraft, relying on it due to budget constraints and its reliable performance. The F-84 passed into history largely unnoticed, but still marked an important chapter in aviation. The F-84's reputation was marred by development challenges and being underpowered, yet its contributions, especially during the Korean War, warrant a reassessment. As a pivotal aircraft in the transition from piston-engine planes to the more advanced Century Series jets, the F-84 played a key role in the era of aviation. While outclassed by the F-86, a later model built on lessons from the F-84, the Thunderjet had many virtues in a time when aircraft design faced significant uncertainty. Its limitations were overshadowed by military priorities, and despite its shortcomings, it marked a significant leap in jet aircraft development, demonstrating that even limited jets had rendered propellers obsolete. Propeller-driven aircraft were reliable but had reached their limits, pushing the transition to the less advanced and more unpredictable jet technology. The F-84, despite its flaws, proved to be the most reliable and rugged of its time, particularly during the Korean War. While the F-86 is remembered for its role in defeating the MiG-15, the F-84 excelled in operating from poor airstrips under harsh conditions, providing critical tactical support that helped resist Chinese intervention. The F-84 also served as a platform for numerous experimental developments that influenced aviation for years to come. Positioned between two iconic tactical fighters, the P-47 Thunderbolt and the F-105 Thunder Chief, the F-84 holds its own in comparison, marking a significant chapter in military aviation history.
Aviation, the art of aeronautics, began with the dreamers, inventors, and daredevils who dared to defy gravity. The journey of aviation was nurtured by pioneers like the Wright brothers, whose first flight marked a historic milestone. The role of aircrafts in world wars was groundbreaking, dramatically changing warfare strategies. This initiated a technological evolution in aviation, transforming the simplistic wings of a biplane into the thunderous roar of jet engines. Let's journey through the ages of aviation. Behind every great aircraft, there were great minds. These visionaries, like Sir Frank Whittle, the innovator of the turbojet engine, redefined air travel. Then there's skunkworks Kelly Johnson, the genius behind the SR-71 Blackbird. His designs combined speed, stealth, and power, crafting machines that dominated the heavens. The contributions of these pioneers have left an indelible mark on the canvas of aviation, shaping the course of history and inspiring generations of engineers and aviators. Each epoch in aviation history gave birth to extraordinary aircrafts, each with their own unique features and roles. The Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird was a marvel of speed and stealth. The F-105 Thunderchief, a supersonic fighter bomber, was vital in the Vietnam War. The P-51 Mustang, a long-range fighter, was critical in World War II. The P-47 Thunderbolt, a heavyweight fighter, was used extensively in the same war. The A-10 Thunderbolt II, the Warthog, is a close air support icon. The Messerschmitt Me-262 marked a leap forward in aviation technology. Each of these game changers were instrumental in their eras, and their legacies still resonate today. Beyond the game changers, there are those that have transcended their practical roles to become icons. The Concorde was not just an aircraft, it was a supersonic symbol of luxury and speed. The B-52 Stratofortress, a strategic bomber, is an icon of power and resilience. These magnificent machines and others like them have become much more than just aircrafts. They are enduring icons that encapsulate the audacious spirit, the relentless innovation, and the boundless ambition that define the world of aviation. for more amazing aerial footage. And to join us in this incredible journey, check out the DroneScapes YouTube channel.
The only reason for an airplane to exist is to go fast. At the Great Air Meet in Rheims, Glenn Curtis set a world's record of just over 43 miles an hour, and the quest for speed was on. In 1913, Maurice Prévost was flying a streamlined Dépôt-Dessin monoplane at 126 miles an hour, and Europe claimed the lead in aviation speed. Immediately after World War I, quest for speed became a catalyst for the development of fighter planes. Countries which had not invested in new engines for their wartime fighters would, for reasons of national pride, invest in new engines to race them eastward. Then, in America in the 1930s, the situation reversed itself. Civilian aircraft, like the Travel Air Mystery Ship and the GB, Waddell Williams racers, became even faster than military aircraft. The reason was simple. Same engines were available to both civil racers and military fighters. The fighters had to carry guns, bombs, oxygen, and radios, while the racers were built only for speed. The world's absolute speed record was passed from country to country. And as the racers became faster and more powerful, they also became more expensive. America's Howard Hughes could afford to build his own racer, and with it set a land-plane speed record. But the absolute speed record of 440 miles an hour was set by a Macchi MC-72 seaplane in 1934, financed by the Italian government. Then military aircraft came back into the lead as the Heinkel and Messerschmitt firms competed for the title. Messerschmitt Bf-109R set a speed record of 469 miles an hour in 1939, a record that lasted for many years. When the jet aircraft came out, speed records rapidly accelerated, the British breaking 1,000 miles an hour in 1956 in a Fairey Delta II. Speeds continued to climb, finally reaching 2,193 miles an hour in 1976 by the Lockheed SR-71, alias Blackbird. While speed was the object, there were many other benefits in creating ever-faster aircraft. Improvement in fuels, streamlining, lubricants, materials, and the list goes on. Speed produced not only prestige and pleasure, but also utility. The speed record setters ultimately paved the way for commercial transports, business jets, and private planes.